with one trauma after another. My mother dying when I was 16 years old, my daughter brutally murdered when she was 22, then my granddaughter I was raising and my husband were both killed on impact in a light plane crash. But now, with the book I have written called Despite the Odds, I'm happy to bring authentic everyday keys that you can use to guide you out of despair, pain and grief to a place where you can smile again. I have stepped out of the prison of grief to become a prisoner of wholeness and hope. Despite the Odds is a story of resilience, recovery and restoration.
Good evening, everybody, and we have a privilege right now to have in front of us Roma Flood, and she's joining us today right now from Australia. And I'm so honored to have you right now, Roma. Roma is the best-selling author. She's also doing the ministry in a prison because God had put in her heart to do that message, and she will share why she chose that path to choose her story and share in a prison. And she's just an amazing person. She's an amazing mentor and she's an amazing friend. And Roma, I'm so privileged, so blessed to have you right now to share your profound message, some kind of voice that you have that nobody else has. And every time I hear your story, even though it's maybe the same, but it has some power into it. And I called you are the trauma delivery queen. You truly are. That's your mission. This is your purpose in life. And that's what you're going to be. I know you're going to be like making somebody else's life amazing. So Roma, I know that when you start saying your story, all I have to do is just sit back and just glance it, just take it all in. So I would love you to kind of take us to the journey and lead us to where God is going to lead you right now.
Thank you very much, Alona. Thank you for having me on your show, IP Resilience. It's a real honour to be here, and I'm excited excited to share what I am going to share today with your viewers. I believe that the story that I am going to share today and the keys that I will give will help people through whatever they're going through. So I'm speaking today on overcoming adversity. In my life, I've had the thread of trauma and adversity quite often, but I just want to start from the beginning. I was born in a small country town in the state of New South Wales in Australia, Coonabarabran. Life was pretty good. I grew up with all my cousins and my aunties and uncles and my grandparents, and life was great until the age of 16 when my mum died. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and she was the light of my life. I adored my mum. And so our family fell apart. And at that point in time, the time when I needed my father most, he decided to go back to Sydney, pack up all of his belongings, and he disappeared and abandoned me and my brother. We had to pack up the house, all of our belongings and my mother's belongings. And then I went and lived with my auntie and uncle who already had 3 young children. So the life and the family that I knew was no more. And I had to take part in a totally different family. And so everything changed for me. I was still at school at that time. And I guess I felt so lonely and abandoned that I was looking for love. But thankfully, I did fall in love with a young man. And I actually fell pregnant to him. Now, amazingly, I was still at school and I was school captain, and that's not anything that I suggest anyone do. But for me, you know, he was wonderful. He was my rock, and he was just what I needed at that particular time. And so I married him. I had a daughter, Danielle, and then I had a son, Jamie. I did finish my schooling. I went through and completed my Year 12 certificate. And years later on, I followed my dream of becoming a teacher. My daughter, I'm going to fast forward a little bit now. When my daughter was in her teenage years, she was a girl. She was bright and bubbly on the outside, but on the inside, she lacked confidence and she craved acceptance. And so that led her to a group of friends that I believe had very similar problems to her. And those friends were people who took drugs. So Danielle, wanting to be part of the in crowd, she took drugs as well. And she started on what we call the soft drug, marijuana or pot. But let me tell you, pot is not a soft drug. She became addicted to it. She was taking it and needed to take it every day. In fact, she was taking it every day going to school. It changed her, it changed her life, it changed her personality. She became angry. She and I started to fight. She became unkempt. Her appearance looked dirty. Her room was dirty. She always wanted to sleep. She didn't want to communicate. And so the bubbly, bright daughter that I had was no more. So it completely changed her. But what that did, that led her into wanting to try other drugs, which she did. And I think, I know that she tried just about every other drug that there was, except going as far as the needle. 12 months later, about 12 months later, my daughter decided that she was going to follow these friends. So she went down to a place called Nimbin in New South Wales. And that place is renowned as a hippie place and drugs are prolific down there. So she disappeared for 5 months. We had no idea where she was, who she was living with or where she was living. When she finally came back, she realized that her life was spiraling downward. So she decided to be proactive and take a hold of the problems and do something about it. So what she did was she threw all of her clothes in two plastic washing baskets. She put her dog on a lead and then she went and stood on the highway and hitchhiked a 12-hour trip down to New South Wales. She went to stay with her auntie and uncle on a farm. She got a job on the farm next door and became a jillaroo. Now, a jillaroo fixes fences, crutches fly-blown sheep, and her boss said that she worked harder than any man ever had. The thing was this, she went there fully on drugs, needing drugs every day, but she came off those drugs cold turkey without the help of any medication or any doctor's advice. And, I am just in awe of my daughter and so proud of her that she did that on her own. And she decided that drugs was not going to be a part of her life and ruin her life anymore. When she came back to the Sunshine Coast 6 months later, she was a drug-free girl and I had my daughter back. So that's just something that, like I said, it was just amazing. And to have the strength and the capacity to do that was just astounding. When she came back, she stayed with us for a while in our home, but then she decided to move into a house with other young people. In that house, she met a young man, she fell in love, and she had 2 children and got engaged to him. But sadly, that young man was a man who was also on drugs and he wouldn't take the step away from drugs, which is what she did. So she decided that the relationship wasn't working. So then she bought a car and she and her 2 babies traveled down to the country, to New South Wales, to visit family and friends. While she was down there, her car broke down and someone had given her a letter of introduction to go to a women's refuge to stay if she needed it. So she went along and checked it out, and there was only one other woman in that refuge with 2 young boys. The thing is this, a women's refuge is designed for women who are under domestic violence orders and who are, in a place where they need security. But this refuge, even though Danielle wasn't in that situation, this refuge was going to be demolished in a week. So the supervisor put that aside and said, look, we're going to be demolished. It's okay. Come on in. Unfortunately, the woman that was there, Danielle, felt really uncomfortable around the other occupant. And so she decided to pack up all of her goods and come home to the Sunshine Coast. But the morning that she was to leave, at 1 a.m. in the morning, while she and her two babies slept, the other woman broke into her room and brutally murdered my daughter. She kidnapped my two grandchildren. She stole my daughter's car, and she stole my daughter's purse and all of her identification. So it wasn't, and the murder happened at 1 a.m. in the morning. It wasn't until 8 p.m. that night that they were able to locate us, her parents, some 12 hours away. With that, my husband, my son and I, we hired a small plane, and we had a pilot fly us down to Sydney to be with the children as quickly as possible, because they'd been through massive trauma and they needed family, they needed us. So that's what we did. Straight after the murder, there was a challenge for the custody of the children by the father, who was still on drugs. And thankfully, we got custody of the children. But something that confirmed this was amazing, because it was about 6 weeks after Danielle's death, and I was having a dream. And in that dream, I shook my husband. I said, listen. I said, that sounds like Danielle laughing. And with that, I opened the door and she was standing there. And she was dressed in a short skirt, and it was like out of blue and grey felt fabric. And I remember thinking in the dream, wow, they wear mini skirts in heaven. And with that, my daughter looked at me and she had this beaming face. And she looked at me and she said, Mum, she said, don't worry about the way it happened. She said, there is no pain or suffering here. And with that, then she said, with this huge smile on her face, she said, Mum, you should see my house, because my daughter always wanted her own home. She had the perfect home, because the Bible says that God has pre-planned and made a mansion in our own taste and our own likeness, and it's all prepared waiting for us. And as far as, no pain or suffering, the Bible also says that too. So I knew that she was in heaven, and that there were no repercussions of the way that she'd been murdered. And the next thing she said to me, she said, Mum, I said to her basically, I said, oh, Danielle, I said, the father's been a bit of a pain. She said, I know, Mum. She said, but he is the father. She said, but I know that you'll take good care of them, care of the children. And with that, I just knew immediately that we would get custody of the children. And we did. The next minute I said to her, Danielle, can you stay? And she said, no, Mum, I have to go back. And with that, she was gone. Amazingly, halfway through the dream, I woke up and I sat up in bed. And I was looking at her and conversing with her, but I wasn't conversing with voice from my mouth. I was conversing with thoughts. And I have since read books that in heaven, that is how that they communicate. And the thing is, I could not see her in bodily form, but I could see her. I knew that she was there in the spirit. And after she said, I have to go back, I just simply was at peace and lay down and went back to sleep. So God in his goodness provided that for me, because every question and everything that I needed to say to my daughter was said during that visitation. And it was only the grace of God that allowed that. It was nothing that I did to try and contact her, but he knew what I needed at that particular time in order for me to keep moving forward. So we got custody of the children, and I'm going to fast forward here. So now here we were again, a family of four. Originally had been myself and my husband, Danielle and Jamie. And now, years later, now it was myself and my husband and Lucinda and Jessie. So a family of four. Lucinda and Jessie were starting to move into their teenage years. Lucinda was not quite 14, Jessie not quite 13. And so Lissy and Bernard decided to go for a fly in his plane, because he loved to fly and she loved to fly with him. So it was a joy for them to share that same thing. So they went for a joy flight out on the Sunshine Coast. They were home a little bit later than expected, so I went for a quick walk. While I was out walking, I had this flash of a picture in front of my eyes of the checkered pattern that you see on a police car, and I just shook my head and discounted and thought, that's ridiculous. As I walked up my driveway, my eyes veered to the left, and unfortunately, what I saw proved to be correct, and there was a police car there. And with that, the policeman opened the front door and came out, and I sang out at him. I screamed it, and I said, don't say anything. I said, this has happened before. I don't want to hear it. But after I went inside, the news was bad, and he told us that both my husband and my granddaughter had gone down in a plane off Kings Beach and were both killed on impact. So obviously shock set in, and I was devastated. I was so angry with what had happened, with what life had thrown at me. I wanted to punch holes in walls. I wanted to throw every plate in the house. Let me tell you that regardless, whether you're a Christian or not, you still go through anguish and pain when you have loss, and you still have to work through those things, you know, but there is a but in this story. So here I was, 3 massive tragedies in my life. Loss was a thread that was sewn repeatedly throughout the fabric of my life, and I was struggling. And now I was a single mum raising a teenage boy, and I had a business to run. You know, I want to say this, that grief and adversity are part of life, and everyone experiences it. But life and misery and the way that we work through it is a choice. I just want to repeat that. It's a choice. We all have to make choices every day. Throughout the day, we make choice after choice after choice and don't realize it. But making a choice for you to follow your purpose and your destiny and to live life to the full is a choice. And then to follow it through, you know, is something that you need to do to come out healed and whole. I started to get angry. I started to get angry with what life had dealt me. And I started to say, enough is enough. And started to talk to myself, encourage myself and say, you can do this. You know, you are important. You know, what you have been through will not pull you down. You will move forward. You will overcome this. And so I started to talk, because self-talk is so, so important. We can set ourselves up for a good day or a bad day. The very first thought of the day can utterly destroy or utterly cause us to utterly enjoy our day. But it's our choice. And basically you have to predetermine before you go to bed that night that that's what I'm going to think about the next day, so that you get up inspired and not thinking about the negative things of the day before. Otherwise they will consume you. You have to get hostile. You have to get angry with your thought lives and tell the negative ones to shut up. And often I used to say to myself when the negative thoughts bombarded me, Roma, don't go there. Just don't go there. And I had to shift those thoughts out of my mind and think of something positive. You've got to think about what you're thinking about, people, because otherwise the negative thoughts will just rule and reign. But you have to rule and reign over them. See the thoughts moving and change your thoughts, because you are the only one that can do it. Your actions and your attitudes will not change on the outside if you don't change this on the inside, but it's your choice. And don't let a victim mentality dictate to you. I could have very well stayed in bed every day and pulled up the covers, but I chose not to. I chose to be victorious. I chose to get out of bed and live life to the full. I had to believe it, and I had to chase after it. My friend Alona here, she gave me some great advice. She wakes up in the morning and she inspires herself and she puts her arms up in the air and she said the testosterone flows through her body. And then she says, I'm a warrior, I'm a conqueror. And she said, it's amazing. And I've started to do that, and it is amazing. And it's a great way to start your day. So I encourage you to do that too. So But whenever you get depressed with anything that pulls you down and you start to feel flat and low, and let's face it, it happens to us this year, 2020. Oh my gosh, with COVID and everything that has happened, we haven't been able to go out and mix with our friends. A lot of us have been affected by this awful disease that, you know, throughout the world, and it has affected us financially and in so many ways. But you know, if those things start to pull you down, you have to remember to fight for what's important, because you're worth it. And you've got to tell yourself that you're worth it. Surround yourself with good friends, even if it's on Zoom, like I do with Alona. You know, surround yourself with good friends that lift you up and support you in whatever you are going through, and have good boundaries in your life. Another key that I learned in my life is to stay in today. I could have very well looked back at all the negative things that had happened in my life and been in the doldrums for the rest of my life, and no one would have thought any less of me. But I decided not to think about those things and to think about the good things, because I wanted to be, I wanted to fill my life, and I wanted to live my life as best I could and enjoy my life again. And that's what I had to do. I had to stay in today and not think about the things of the past. And that's such a key. The other key that I learned in my journey was learning to forgive. Now, the woman that murdered my daughter wasn't deemed guilty. And that was a hard pill to swallow, because I wanted her to reap the repercussion of her actions. But I learned, as God helped me to forgive, that forgiveness was for me, not for her. And I learned that peace happened within my heart because I was able to release that person and forgive that person. And I realized that what that did was it gave the control back to me, because I didn't want her to control my life anymore. She'd done enough. Forgiving ourselves also is something that we need to do. We make mistakes daily. I learned that throughout my journey, I was going to take something bad and turn it around for good. So I always had it in my heart to write a book. Even from a child, I never realized that my book would be the story of my life. I wrote a book called Despite the Odds. And despite the odds, you can overcome anything in your life. But I learned also that throughout my life, God had placed what was a gift, I believe, a gift of resilience. And what is resilience? It's no matter what you work through, no matter what the challenge, what the trauma, what the adversity you face in life, that you can work through that challenge and come back stronger and better. You are worth living the life that God predestined for you. And when I say God predestined it, it's because obviously I am a Christian. So for me, Christianity was a key element in my life, and having a relationship was wonderful. After the plane accident, he provided something profound for me there as well, but that's in my book. So because of time restraints, I won't tell you today. I know that if I didn't have a relationship with Jesus, that I wouldn't be where I am today. I couldn't have done this life working through each of those traumas without people say, well, how can I have a relationship with a God that I don't see? The process is so simple, people. We complicate it. I just want to finish with this. You know, no matter what you have been through, no matter what tragedy you have experienced or trauma, no matter what adversity you are facing today, no matter what challenges come before you in each and every day, you can work through it if you have Jesus batting for you, if he's your friend, if he's your savior. So thank you very much for allowing me to share my life story, Alona. And I really hope that people can take hold of some keys that I've shared with them today to apply in their life so that they can work through whatever they're working through and come out the other side. Thanks very much.
I know they will. I know they will. And I know you said something very profound that sometimes as a Christian, it's like a biggest misconceptions when we think that just because we go through adversities and the pain, we're not allowed to be angry. We are. This is the process that everybody has to go through. Even David was angry, right, at God. So it's a normal process that we just have to allow ourselves to go through. We have to also find the right person to help us go from point A to point Z, from the anger to the deliverance. But we have to experience that in order for us to be real and authentic, before us, ourselves, before God. So we'll be able to learn and grow. And I like what you said, that I always say it every morning, that you have to wake up like a warrior and go to bed like a champion. Because throughout the day, you will have to conquer and battle lots of pain, lots of doubts, lots of, different situations in your lives that, you have to face. So yes, you have to condition yourself on a daily basis, because this machine is the hardest machine. If you learn how to program your thoughts, there's nothing can stop you, nothing. So yes, I agree with you, Roma, when you said you have to really position yourself every morning to like really conquer. This day belongs to you. Not that you belong to the day, but this day is created for you. Therefore, you have to embrace it the way it is. But you can conquer it. You can come victorious before you go to bed. I always say, I'm going to bed like a champion, because I had to conquer fear, doubts. I had to like let myself prove myself that I can do it, that I am capable, and I blow my own mind.
Yeah.
So, and that's the best thing. Like you said, even forgiving yourself, believing in yourself, like working in yourself. This is the hardest thing that we have to do, but it is, like you said, possible. It's possible. Just be authentic, be real before God with your pain. So Roma, I want to thank you today for joining us from Australia, and for bringing your lovely accent, to beautiful queens right in front of right now with the two accents, right? Who are trying to achieve the dreams and our purpose of life. And I just pray that whoever is going to listen to this message are going to maybe be motivated by getting the purpose of their life, why they're here. And sometimes they think they have to do something bigger and better. No, just allow God to love you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
God bless you.
Thank you.